Hey, what's up everyone? I'm James, one half of the board gaming duo called the Trick Takers, and today we're chatting about how to teach board games. This is one of the lesser talked about parts of the board game world, but one of the most important. Teach a board game well and everyone should have a good grasp of what's going on and be in on the fun. Teach a board game badly and well, you might not be opening that game box again for a while. So let's get started. First, you have to know how to play the game. Like, really know how to play the game. If you don't understand the rules, well, you're not gonna be able to teach it. It's kind of like how you should read a recipe end to end before you start cooking, and then explain the game in your own words. After reading the manual, if you still have some questions or are confused, check out some how to play videos. Or if the game has a solo mode, play the game by yourself, carefully walking through the turn-by-turn gameplay. That's how I was able to get through the 20+ pages of Spirit Island's rulebook to be able to teach it to others. And lastly, if you get really stumped on something, you can look at a place like BoardGameGeek.com and find probably an oddly specific thread matching that question you had, because chances are, if you have some question about a game, someone else has already had it. Now that you have a good feel about how the game is played, or have even played it in the past, let's talk about how we start bringing in others. Set up the board. It's really hard to teach a game without all the components in front of you. Let people know what cards they can look at, and let people just kind of take in all the pieces in front of them. Once everyone's sat down and you have their attention, start off with a few key ideas. What's the theme of the game? How do you win the game? And how do you go about achieving that? It's a lot easier to get people excited about a game if you can pull them into the world of the board game and explain what their specific role in that universe is. That's where theme comes in. Maybe you're a restaurant owner, like in Rival Restaurants, competing and bartering for ingredients to run the best restaurant in town. Or maybe you're a dinosaur army, powering up your dinosaurs and fighting over an island before a meteor hits, like in Evo. I find that bringing people into the board games world is the easiest way to get them to listen to the maybe tedious rules that are going to follow. If someone gets halfway through the game before finding out what they actually have to do to win, it's probably already too late, and they might not even want to finish up the game. So make sure it's clear from the start what you have to do in order to win, so everyone's got a fair chance. And how do you actually play? This is often a complicated maze of rules and steps to follow, so before you start explaining, think of the best way to walk through the gameplay. It's kind of like connecting the dots for each part of the game. I tend to start with walking through all the different options that are available on a turn. For each set of options, if it has its own set of rules, walk through those all at once instead of jumping around and causing even more confusion. Once people have a good understanding of what they're doing on a turn, explain how rounds work, how many rounds there are in a game, or at what other point the game ends. Make sure to encourage people to ask questions too, and give positive reinforcement when they do. That's a great question, but give me just a sec to come back to that. If people are scared to ask questions, they're just going to be more and more confused as the game goes on. And a little side note, when explaining the game, try and have just one person do it. If a second player knows how to play, they may want to jump in and explain something that they're really excited about, but it can tend to just cause more confusion, jumping from one subject matter to another. Encourage the second person instead to just point out little small rules that you might have glanced over. Or better yet, be the Vanna White of your game explanation by pointing out game objectives as you talk about them. Speaking of which, I wonder if there's a Wheel of Fortune board game. Once you've explained all the rules, check to see if anyone needs to learn by doing to get a feel for the gameplay. For this, I recommend playing a couple test rounds and letting people make a couple probably bad decisions. Then, restart the game and start fresh, now that everyone has a better idea of what's actually going on. If you're not doing test rounds, You can always decide to restart the game if the first few rounds are just a complete mess and people are feeling bad about their choices. Once the game starts for real though, if you want everyone to enjoy themselves, you should expect to assist others for most of the first playthrough, being a sort of rules lawyer and guide until the players start figuring everything out. If you're focusing solely on your own gameplay and dominating the field with strategies you've learned from previous playthroughs, then the newcomers are probably not having a good time. It also helps to talk through your own decisions, but lead others to make their own choices, especially in a co-op game where you want everyone to be involved. I think one of the best feelings is seeing people glow up realizing that they've won a game on their first playthrough. In other words, if you've won a game that you're trying to teach, you've actually kind of lost. The only other tip I would say is know your audience. If the most complex game someone has played is Cards Against Humanity, then maybe don't start off teaching them a game like Gloomhaven. Introduce some filler games or some other easier games like Ticket to Ride to slowly work their way up. See our video on top 10 games to get your friends into board gaming for more recommendations like this. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully you can start throwing your own game nights and introducing your friends into the wonderful world of board gaming by teaching them your favorite games. Once again, I'm James from The Trick Takers. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. We post new videos every other Thursday, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when our next video drops. Until then, pull out some new games from the shelf and start teaching others. Have fun. Trick Takers out.